Alrighty, let's officially get started with this all. Thank you all for coming, old student, new friends. So welcome, thank you very much for being here. My name is Rob Queen. I wrote Escape from the Spotlight. Copies of it are on the glass table right back there, or in Jack's hand. Either place you can get them, but please don't beat up Jack to get his copy. There are plenty of copies here. And I guess I'm your host tonight. And I will take you guys through this evening, and at the end, I'll be hosting any questions that you guys have about anything that you want to ask. If you need advice on hosting, don't come to me. I am probably not the greatest host in the world. But if you go to www.thehost.com, they may have some really good advice for you on the subject of hosting. And since we're on the subject of hosting, I thought that I would inform you that there is a Korean movie called The Host. If you've never seen it, I'm not going to say you need to. If you haven't seen it, you can, if you really want. And I watched it the other day thinking that it would have some good advice on hosting a group of people, but it didn't help me with that at all. About the only thing that it showed was a giant mutated fish that ran up on land and killed people. It was a horrible monster with like 15 different mouths. It was really disturbing. Good movie though, if you like weird science fiction movies like that. But one of its victims was a teenage boy. Poor kid. And I say that he was a poor kid, not because he died, but rather because of what he was, a teenager. And I think that we can probably all understand that situation. So, I'm going to ask for a little bit of crowd participation. Raise your hand if you are a teenager. All right, a few of us are. Excellent. Raise your hand if you were once a teenager. Okay, most of us. Did anyone not raise their hand? Okay. I was going to ask, oh, there's a cat over there. I noticed that he did not raise his hand, but that's because he's a cat, and you know, cats don't really care what people do or say. You can ask them to come and hang out with you, but they'll just be like, no. And then they'll walk off and do their own thing. But the reason I just asked that question of you all is to kind of create a bond between us all. A bond of experience. Either we were teenagers, or we're a cat. And look at him treating himself like, yeah, I'm not going to let this guy take all the attention here. But it's really important to have that unity, that bond, that connection, because that's really what life is all about. It's about creating the connections with other people. And unfortunately, we are all bonded by the hell that is teenage life. And by hell, I mean wonderful. It's wonderful, absolutely. Which gets us back to the kid that I mentioned a second ago, the kid from the movie. I said that he was poor because of the fact that he is a teenager. And not to make myself sound old, but Britney Spears has a song called Not Yet a Woman, not a girl, not yet a woman. I had to look at my notes here. And the song's title sums up the experience of teenage life really, really well. It shows a little bit of childhood, which is the girlhood, and a little bit of the adulthood. And the song also slowly introduces you to being a teenager also slowly introduces us to a number of different experiences. A whole lot of different experiences. When we are a teenager, we get to drive for the first time. We get to vote, at least here in this country. I don't know what it is like in Taiwan or in Vietnam or in Thailand. Marriage, if you're brave enough for that. life-changing decisions when you have the experience of middle years. It's up to you. If you choose to get married as a teenager, you are much braver or much more stupid than I. I don't know. Bravery and stupidity are about the same. Brave people are often considered really stupid. What is he doing? Oh God, why? Oh, what an idiot. Oh, he survived? He did not die? Amazing. Sorry. Additionally, when you are a teenager, you get to serve for your military. Yay. You can have legal access to guns, at least in this country. Yay. Not yay, whatever, up to you. You do need a license in order to get guns, but that's neither here nor there. You can also get tobacco. You can start gambling, and I feel like I may have missed a few other things, but some things are probably best not talked about in public. About the only thing that we don't have access to as a teenager is alcohol. But that's just because we want to protect people on the road from drunk teenagers. So we'll wait until, or the government in this country has told us to wait until we're 21, where we have a few extra years of experience before we can start getting drunk and killing people in our cars. Again, dangerous weapon. Licenses, very important. Basically, the whole teenage experience is like walking through a turnstile at an amusement park. You become a teenager, you walk through the doors, and then Disneyland of experiences. All sorts of things that we've never experienced before are suddenly available to us. Being a teenager is awesome. And teenage years, or adolescence as is known to the rest of the world, since few, if any other languages actually use the word teen, it is an exciting time, but it's also really, really confusing. Much more confusing than walking around Disney World. The physical changes are vast. We get taller, we fill out in various and strange parts of our bodies. Our faces break out into dips and shallows of acne, which is good fun. Hair suddenly starts growing in strange places. And it's all a pretty embarrassing time. To say nothing of the sudden and strange funny feelings that we suddenly start feeling for people that were totally normal 2 weeks ago. And it's a really complex and confusing time. And it leads to all manner of distractions. And distractions from class, distractions from work, distractions while we're driving. Oh yeah, I'm driving. I should probably focus on the road, not that strange, beautiful person over there. And it suddenly goes to show how important driving licenses actually are, because they have to teach us not to get distracted by beautiful people that we suddenly see while we're driving down the road, or beautiful cars, whatever, whichever. And it's with these massive physical changes, teenagers also have to contend with a whole lot of emotional issues as well. Many contend with the trials of their first jobs. Has anyone been a teenager and had a job? Good fun, huh? Yeah, a few of us have. Okay, cool. We also have to contend with thoughts of college or university. How many of us had to think about college or university as a teenager? Oh, a lot of us there. Yeah, exactly. Thoughts of figuring out how to get the car, to get the girl, to maybe get that first kiss, like Michael Bay did in the first Transformers movie. Then there's also pressure from your parents, which I think we can all relate to that. It's suddenly like, oh, you're not a kid anymore, get a job. But I'm 13, I don't care, get a job. And it's really, really tough. There's also pressure from evil teachers. and from our bosses when we finally get those jobs, which is just good fun. Work! I don't want to. You like money? Okay, I'm going to work. Thank you. Yes. And all of this, with all of this, childhood disappears, and life suddenly saddles us with responsibility, with stress, and with expectation. And we all just want to run away. And that is teenage life. It's good fun. At home, there are also some big changes, maybe because of who we were or are in adolescence, maybe because of the world's sudden interest in us, and it happens. Sometimes we just want to go down the street and mind our own business, but suddenly the world pays attention to you. And it's like, why? I'm just me. Yes, but you're interesting. What can you tell us about this, that, or something else? I think that as teenagers, we've all had that moment of, Mom, Dad, you don't know what I'm going through. And then your mom and dad look at you with that look of, right. And it suddenly becomes a teenager's mission to figure the world out for themselves without going to their parents for any advice. To that end, teenagers, I apologize, I'm a teacher, do a number of things. Some take their newfound curiosity in the world to the point of obsession. They become obsessed in sports, or books, or music, or art, or video games, or jobs, or girlfriends, or boyfriends, cats. It's not an obsession. It's not. I swear it's not. And so they become really focused on the things in their lives that are really important to them. And where am I? They do so with little realization of what they're doing, which is really figuring out how to minimize damages. And that's really what teenage life is all about. It's minimizing emotional stress. It's minimizing physical stress. It's minimizing the sudden realization that they're far away from where they want to be. And also the realization that they're really close to where they want to be if they decide to make it happen. And it's a challenge. And in the modern world, this becomes even more of a challenge because these stressors are compounded by social media, where trolls are not just fantasy creatures. They've moved out of Lord of the Rings and they're in the real world with social media and terrorize us with that. Yay! And it's in this landscape, is it any wonder that it's so difficult for teenagers to get out of bed every morning? I understand where they're coming from. We've all been there, haven't we? Where we wake up one day and it's just like, I don't want to go. You have to. I don't want to. You're the teacher. You have to go. And then we have to go. I'm speaking as a teacher, I apologize. But I remember my teenage years very well. I did not ever want to get up. And I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We've been there. We've all battled our internet trolls. We've all been in the grip of peer pressure. And it's tough. And Doran Titus, who is the main character of Escape from the Spotlight, is exactly the same as the rest of us. He finds his 15th year no different. He suffers the same daily problems that any teenager must contend with and battle with. The acne, the annoying random hair, the peer pressure, the difficulty that comes when you want to talk to someone amazingly beautiful, but the only things that come out of your mouth are, and then the shame that comes with that embarrassment of trying to talk to that beautiful person. Yeah, he's very much your everyday, normal teenager, except for two things. The first thing is the fact that his parents are not divorced. In this day and age, so many parents get divorced. parents. So many marriages end in divorce, but Doran has been, some say lucky, some would say not lucky because, hey, parents get divorced, 2 Christmases, good deal. 2 birthday parties, good deal. And so his parents are still together, and his parents, the Tituses, are in charge of an animal sanctuary, which is also the other thing that really sets him apart. So he's constantly surrounded by strange animals from all over the world. Kind of like an EF teacher. So, private joke between a few of us, I know. But no, I'm not calling our awesome students animals, unless we include ourselves in the thing. And I am, so whatever. In any case, it's a wonderful place for Doran to grow up. He gets to meet all these different animals, and then when he's not working with and interacting with horses and zebras and emus and sheep and dogs and zorses and I don't know, what are 5 other animals? I can't think of any others. Never mind, you don't have to do that. We're not in class. When he's not at the Titus Animal Sanctuary, he's back in school learning the complex language of 100 of people, which is far more complex than learning the 100+ languages of different animals. And so when he's in school, he has taken a very well-learned approach to social interactions at school. Namely, stand off and watch the zoo. And then he can see how best to interact with the other animals in his high school. And what better place to learn about them than from animals at a zoo? Anyway, they say that things come in 3s, and even though I said that Doran, only 2 things set Doran apart from everyone else, there's actually one other thing. And that's kind of where Escape from the Spotlight begins. And he finds out that something is really not right. He realizes that instead of his favorite color being red, his favorite color is really crimson. And I'm joking. No, the only crimson that we see is the blood that gushes out of him in a car accident when he gets hit in the first chapter of the book. And then he dies. No, he doesn't die. I'm just playing with you all. In fact, when he should get hit by a car, he doesn't. But why and how? And see, that's what really sets him apart from everyone else. Had he been a normal teen, like those of you who were like, I'm a teenager, then yes, the accident would have resulted in a hospital room visit, or maybe even a visit to the crematorium, where they would burn his body because he died from the car accident. But instead, the stress of the situation triggers in him a remarkable transformation. Anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love Transformers, and are you surprised that I'm writing a book about a kid who can turn into different animals? Whatever. In any case, this mighty metamorphic miracle enables him to avoid the careening car and walk away from the accident without a scratch, totally unhurt. And for Doran, suddenly a whole new world of opportunity shatters the walls of his preconceptions about the world and his place in it. It is like he steps off the plane into a different country and suddenly has to throw away everything that he thought he knew. Being able to transform into different animals forces him to come to terms with brand new complexities in life. And over time, his education leads him to a little-known world called heartbreak, because society refuses to leave him alone. And such a thing threatens not just to transform his person, but everything that he has ever experienced. When he learns that he can change his shape into different animals, he decides to keep it secret. And it's the kind of secret that if I may make a comparison, dozens or hundreds hide from their families, not just in the USA, but all around the world, for fear that their families will completely reject them for. And it's the kind of thing that Doran kind of expects to happen to him as well. He expects his family to reject him for being a shape changer. Just as many LGBT individuals have really feared telling their family about their orientation or about their reality because they're afraid of what the family's going to do when they find out. And I should make it clear that Doran's adventures are not autobiographical. I cannot change my shape. It's heartbreaking, and I'm really sad about that. But no, in all aspects of his life, he's not at all me. He's very much an individual, his own person who kind of does things for his own reasons, and it was really kind of fun to explore his life. Life loves a good curveball, and that when things start looking good, rather than give us the heat like a fastball for an easy hit to knock the ball out of the park, it throws us a curveball, and we swing, and the ball goes into the catcher's mitt, and the audience is just like, and then the baseball player is like, oh, I hate my life. And that's kind of what happens in life all the time, whether we want it to or not. And like so many things, as a teenager, it just leads to unavoidable life lessons. And one of those big life lessons is always lock the door to your room, because you never know what your parents are going to interrupt. And that leads us into the first of 3 passages that I'm going to read directly from the book today. And I guess I'll jump right into it. Doran's father's name is Mark Titus, and I'll just read it and see where it goes from there. The night is falling, not fallen. The night is falling, and Mark and Doran have found their way to the primate enclosure, which is an elongated house with a variety of wings springing off of it. To one side there are the monkeys, and to the other are the generally larger apes. Sorry, I lost my place here. I apologize, everybody. All of these mesh-wired areas, called corn crib enclosures, offer their inhabitants plenty of walking room and a variety of reinforced structures for them to play on. Hey, Samoy, Mark says to the largest of the silver-backed gorillas in the largest of the primate habitats. The male is picking at something on his back. Something wrong there? Samoy rolls back his large lips towards Mark and continues picking. As Doran looks, he realizes that the action is more like scratching than simple picking. Are you hurt, big guy? Doran asks. The beast's large brown eyes glance his way, almost as if he were agreeing with Doran's observation. I don't see any blood, but that could be on account of poor lighting, Mark says. We could separate him from the others and check it out, Doran suggests. Maybe it's just a sting or something. Whatever it is, looks more like an irritant than an outright injury. Mark has Doran take an apple from his backpack that he always brings with him when he makes the rounds. With the apple in hand, Mark moves a short ways away from the massive animal and invites him over. Samoy looks at the apple and sniffs the air. He pats the top of his head and puckers his lips a bit. Seeming pleased with the notion of a treat, he crosses the short distance on his knuckles and takes the fruit from Mark's hand. Settling down with his back to the mesh wiring, Samoy then proceeds to loudly crunch the treat out of existence. He didn't seem to be in any pain as he moved. Do you notice anything? Nothing, Doran says, reaching through the grating to scratch at Samoy's shoulder bone. There is a large sigh of appreciation in response. I think he'll be fine tonight, but we should let the night crew know, just to keep an eye on it. Hey, Dad, did you hear that? Doran asks, detecting something just off the edge of his senses. It's kind of like a buzzing. Mark cocks his head to listen. Yeah. It's getting louder, from over there. The pair watch in the direction of the sound. With the sun all but gone, their vision is limited to the splotches of light from the overhead lamps and the walkways and the interior lights of the various enclosures. What is that? It sounds like bees? Doran says. He thinks back to the girl in his school, Bella, who was attacked by a huge swarm of bees. But this seems odd, as Doran has never heard of bees being nocturnal. Nonetheless, he is concerned enough to mention it to his dad. Hey, there have been some attacks lately. One of the girls in my class was stung almost 100 times this summer. I think it made her pretty sick. 100 times? Mark asks, astonished. Come on, we better check this out. Most bees have a barbed stinger. That's what kills most of them when they sting. Their barbs get stuck in their victims, and when they try to get free, the barbs rip their abdomens. Because of this, bees don't usually sting unless their lives are in danger. Something is seriously wrong if 100 gave up their lives to attack that girl. The pair move away from the primate cage and toward the buzzing. Several animal cries pierce through the night and strike at them. Come on, Mark says, breaking into a run. Their pace brings them to another several hundred feet before a dark mass appears under one of the lights. Mark and Doran come up short, struck in awe at seeing the mass of undulating and buzzing life bearing down on them at greater speed than Doran would have guessed bees had. Doran, move! Mark says, shoving Doran to one side of the onrushing swarm as he dives the other way. Unfortunately for Doran, the push pushes him directly into the oncoming path of the insects. Within moments, their buzzing has completely enveloped him. For a moment, Doran thinks he will be all right and will get out of this without any stings. The bees prove otherwise a moment later, as a sharp pain slices through his forearm. Doran thought that when he put on his black Chicago White Sox hoodie before coming out here, that he would be protected from bee stings. But the thick cotton was not enough to protect him from the sting. Within moments, he is struck by another, and a third, and a fourth. If he were to stay here, it would only be a matter of time before he got another dozen stings, maybe even culminating with a collection of stings as poor Bella had. An instinctive drive to escape pushes at the top of his spine, and he gives in, letting himself implode into the much more agile and less obstructive ferret form. In the gentle vacuum that is created with his implosion, a number of bees spin awkwardly before continuing on towards their unknown destination. Doran, meanwhile, has raced off the path in the direction of his father attempted to push him. Once there, he lets himself expand once again into his normal form. There are so many bees that it is another minute or two before the entire swarm has passed onward. But a few follow him off to the side of the path. Doran is panting and wincing at the few spots where the bees got him. When the coast is clear, both he and his father emerge from the shadows. When Mark sees his son, there is a moment of hesitation. But then he takes his son into his arms. The embrace is short but strong, and Doran can't help but wonder, did his father see him change his shape? He swallows nervously, thinking at the inevitable. He had to have noticed. But if he weren't so preoccupied with avoiding a few hundred bee stings, maybe he wouldn't have to deal with the repercussions of his father seeing his transformation. As to how Mark and Candace Titus deal with this, well, I'm not going to tell you. You'll just have to read the book. But this incident sets up a couple of different things. The family problem and another major problem, which is the bees. The bees are a pretty large antagonist within this story, because if bees actually do attack people en masse like that, they would have to have a good reason for that. So what could really be inciting these things to attack? And that's one of the biggest mysteries of this story. And as Doran tries to uncover or discover the secrets to this situation, he will have to discover a lot about himself as a young adult and as a shape changer. At heart, Escape from the Spotlight is a story of many facets of discovery. And while there are threats and challenges aplenty, some of them are not quite as horrible as getting hit by a car or getting attacked by a bunch of bees. And being a total Transformers nerd, it was really enjoyable for me to be with Doran as he learned about these different shapes that he could take on. This next passage is one of these moments, chosen directly because of Orlando, who is around here somewhere. And, well, it's Doran. It's an interaction between Doran and one of his staunchest allies throughout the book, Mr. Bungle. Arriving home less than half an hour later, Doran had made the entire trip as a weasel. He was winded, certainly, but the form, the shape, was becoming more and more comfortable to him. Not content with that, and with a good deal of energy left, he ran into the barn and proceeded to see how quickly he could shift from one form to the next. It was like reps in a gym. Human to mouse to ferret to weasel to marten to mink. Then a 15-second break while he got his breath back. Then again. Then another 15-second break. Then another rep. Mouse to ferret to weasel to marten to mink. 15 repetitions left him spent, flat out on his back, his body sweating like he had just sprinted a mile. Mr. Bungle came in to see how he was doing and sat right on his chest. "Ugh, off, Bungle!" Doran told the large cat, who was by no means a small kitty. He must have weighed a good 15 pounds. "Come on, I'm serious. Off, or else you'll be in for a huge surprise." When Bungle refused to leave Doran's chest, the human closed his eyes and imagined himself as a cat. At first, nothing happened. But with Mr. Bungle on him, even purring just ever so slightly, Doran was able to throw his senses into the sensations of a feline. The transformation felt odd because there was a cat on him, but as he completed the shape, Mr. Bungle, the cat, was thrown up off of his chest. Doran felt a tiny cat-like smile creeping across his face as he silently challenged his friend. Mr. Bungle took one look at Doran and put his ears flat back. He stepped forward, sniffed at Doran, then swatted him once. He did not hiss, as Doran was expecting him to, because, it's such a common thing for cats to do when he loses the warm body that he's comfortably perched on. But the moment of surprise passes, and staring down his intruder, a deep growl finally emerges from Mr. Bungle's throat. Doran, cool as a cat, merely looks his friend up and down, concentrating of the details of being a cat, the whiskers, the tail, the retractable claws. That was a peculiar sensation. Sitting down, Doran pulled up one of his paws and examined the rough pads and then the slits where the claws retracted from. When they extended, he started to purr in contentment. Oh yes, being a cat would be fun. But first, you had to get familiar with the form. If anyone has ever heard of the band Faith No More, Anybody? Okay, we got a couple nods here. Cool. Their second singer, Mike Patton, had or has a side project called Mr. Bungle. One of my good friends from Thailand had a rabbit named Mr. Bungle, and so the cat is named for the rabbit, who is named for the band. That is the creative process, ladies and gentlemen. You take completely ridiculous ideas from random places and put them into the story. It's really kind of weird. We've got one more passage to read because, to me, good stories are real people. And we take, like I said, with the Mr. Bungle example, rabbit to cat to band. There we go, thank you. I think my connection of those things was wrong, but band to rabbit to cat, there we go. And so it's really important to create as detailed a world as possible, for better or worse, as take the next section as you will. But this was an analogy that I felt was really, really important for the story. Not just for the humanity of the scene, but because of the reality of the actual emotion involved with it. The emotions that Doran struggles with are authentic. They map the highs and lows that any of us might experience in life. Not just as a teenager, but as an adult as well, or even as a child. I think the emotions of a cat are a little bit different, but whatever. Take them as they are. And in life, we have stunning highs with just amazing lows, followed by moments of total confusion, which then fade like an unwanted Olympia sky into a clarity of understanding, aka summer, which lasts all 2 weeks in this part of the world. Anyway, at this point in the tale, Doran has actually lost his powers. And it raises the question of, what is it like? What is it like to actually lose something that you're so familiar with? And basically, all the damage that came from having his powers has already been done. Problems with family, problems with friends, problems at school. And so it's kind of like suddenly his whole life was changed because of these powers. And then he loses them. So it's kind of like, oh, well, that's awesome. It's kind of like writing 5 pages of an essay, only to have your computer decide, delete! And it's all gone. And so he finds someone to communicate his confusion to. And I apologize. You'll see why in a second, but I do apologize because it should never happen to anybody. During the Thanksgiving football game, Doran learns that one of the attendees is a veteran of the country's combat in Iraq. Like many who headed off to battle, the man returned home incomplete. A metal hook has replaced his right hand. Doran stares at the hook. And as he stares, he considers the loss of a hand and the life of an amputee. He can't help but compare the amputation to his own problems of losing his powers. And finally, after the stocky blonde man catches him staring, Doran swallows his fear and approaches the man. Does the pain go away? Doran asks without preamble. The veteran looks down at Doran. Usually when I catch people staring, they get embarrassed and hurl an elephant in the room, then walk the other way. Sorry, I didn't mean to stare. It's just, I'm Doran Titus. I'm bad at this. I mean, I don't want to come off as weird or anything, but I don't think it's ugly or anything. It's, I don't know, I'm just being stupid. I'm sorry. TJ Elder. Sorry. TJ Elder, the veteran says, offering his left hand, because of the hook. Pleasure to meet you. My fiance works for you guys. I was invited as her +1. +1. I'm sorry if I'm being a jerk, bothering you like this, especially during the game. By the way, Super Bowl this weekend. Boring game anyway. It's all defensive. Not too much exciting in situations like that. But defense is the thing that will save your life if you give it the chance. Looks like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, Mr. Titus. Care to take a walk? Doran nods. Armed with drinks, TJ with a can of beer which fits nicely into his hook, and Doran with a cup of hot mulled cider. The pair head outside. Here, towards the parking lot and the main gate, there's only one exhibit directly nearby, the savannah, which the lodge looks out onto. But instead of sticking to the convention of staying close to the lodge, the pair walk away up the path, past the hyenas, and to the Zonky and Zorse exhibit. Crazy animals, TJ says, looking down at the striped crossbreeds. I saw a real zebra in Iraq. On patrol one night, we had to cut through some guy's garden, and there was a zebra just walking around. I think about that from time to time. I wonder whatever became of it. Did it wind up as steak for someone desperate for food? That happens to a lot of animals in that place, you know? The bombing turns most buildings into skeletons, and any beast that's foolish enough to travel into the vicinity winds up over a fire pit. I doubt it found its way free. It'd be old if it were. How long do they live? A zebra can live up to 30 years in captivity. Some might even live a little bit longer. Zorse and Zonky don't have quite as long a lifespan. Even worse, they're born sterile. So they can't have any babies. That's sad, kind of wrong in a way. After a sip of his beer, TJ looks at the hook holding onto the... There's a lot in this world that's wrong. So what were you wondering about, Mr. Titus? Does the pain go away? Doran asks of the man's injury. The physical pain? Like last year's snow. But the ghost pain? That's a stubborn bastard. I might feel a prick in my finger, and I've got to tell myself that I'm not really feeling anything. Sometimes it even works. Not always, though. What about the emotional pain? A dark cloud passes over the man's face, one that has nothing to do with the overcast sky. That's a daily dance. Doran was afraid of this. Having lived as other creatures, it's the memory that makes it so hard. The euphoria of descending down a wall, the instinctive flight from a predator, the confusing interactions with fellow ferrets, the daily workout to improve his transformations. Doran sighs. You do get used to it, TJ says. You adapt. You move on. But then you try doing something that you're so used to doing in a specific way, and then it hits you right out from left field. The baseball analogy coming back, you know? See, I know it's different. How can I not? Nearly a decade after losing my hand, I've made peace with it. But then it hits you out of the blue. I look down and I expect to see my hand, but there's only the stump. So you get used to it, but you still miss it like crazy. It's hard to give up something that was such a big part of you. That kind of pain never really leaves. You just get used to it. I'm sorry, Doran says, staring down at the zebra mix enclosure. He can't meet the man's eyes for sorrow. Mazel tov. Thank you, everyone, for listening.